Good morning and welcome back to the white page. The white page where nothing usually happens, but somehow always manages to work. As I stated before, this white page is where the magic happens. And this time, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever, I'm going to actually read a story. A story that I've actually taken years upon years upon years to do. And yes, it is in the market. And in a sense of the word, it is my pride and joy. So, what I'm about to read for you as I pull it out on file is the book that actually made me famous. The Legacy of the Seven Stars. The very first volume of the book. So, yes, I am going to take you through the book as I have made it. And if you feel need to drop a comment, please do. As I actually start, if it is actually there, The Legacy of the Seven Stars. This is The Legacy of the Seven Stars, The Stars of Great Virtue, Volume 1. The First Star, the Star of Destiny. Ichise Hoshi no Unme. Chapter 1, Unexpected Legend, Reluctant Hero. For many years, Yukihei no Kuran, or the Dragoon Clan, has been around defending the lands of the light dimension. They serve the Great Light, an omnipotent being that overlooks the entire universe. They were given the responsibility of guarding and caretaking the life dimension. Throughout various generations, there have been many heroes who have been praised as legends or gods among their own people. This race excelled in science and technology as they strived to revive their lost homeland. Through it all, they managed to structure their civilization and way of life respectively. This is the legend and the history of the Dragoon, the family honor and legacy that has been passed down for many generations. But our story is in present day. Our hero is a reluctant yet headstrong young man that goes by the name of Lance Tenshiryu of the Dragoon. Anyone who knows of him knows that he's considered a legend in the world of Silver Celestia, a sister realm of planet Silver. He is the son of the last Dragoon leaders, Sir Magmar and Lady Miyami of Dragonia, which was in a town located in the small realm of Jin Raijin. Being a hero was more of a challenge than actually becoming one. As the old saying goes, heroes are not born, they're made. During his early years of adventuring, he volunteered on several missions when he applied for work at the Missions Guild. At the age of 19, Lance is 6 feet and 2 inches tall, with a tan, borderline bronze color skin and dark, mysterious brown eyes. Although he has the features of a human, in his blood, he is a dragon. Yes, that's right, a dragon-born human. He lived in a town similar to Britain in Europe in its Dark Age. The people lived in fear, and these creatures would disguise themselves in the form of humans. People lived in fear of the monsters that thrived on bloodshed, and these same creatures would disguise themselves in the form of humans. Dragons could fall into this category, but the only difference is that not all dragons are fire-breathing, gold-hoarding, man-slaying creatures, but they claim to be in many tales, at least not in this day and age. But as of typical many humans, they ridicule anything that isn't of pure blood, thus tormenting the poor souls into a pool of their own nothingness that was once called their self-esteem. This village, where Lance formerly resided and worked as an adventurer for hire, was called Hasincho. At first, he was a stranger in this foreign land because a dragoon wasn't considered a real race to some people. But as soon as he gained the public trust, he was accepted as one of their own. There was indeed a day that one mission changed the whole course of this young man's life. Agent F7, we called you here for a matter of great importance, said the head of the guild, clasping his hands firmly as he looked to Lance. Okay, so what is it? Another lycanthropic punt? Mysterious plague. Maintenance stress. Lance tilted his head a bit, rubbing the sweat off his nose. No, there's nothing like that. This mission is bigger than those you've handled before. Take a look at this. He handed Lance a photo of a very dark, eerie castle. This is... Lance questioned intently while listening. This is Castle Akur. There's been a report of some strange happenings over there. We sent our best hunters there, but they haven't returned. Lance raised a brow at the remark, but he kept his cool not to let his pride cloud his bare judgment. I see, he replied calmly. So, you want me to go to this place and see what's really going on, sir? That's right. We feel the worst, and you are. Let's hope, Lance. The old man continued. Lance, I don't think I've ever told you this, but you're much different from the other agents here. I believe it's due to that fire in you that I once had when I was your age. Lance simply listened as he sat down with his hands in his lap. Sir, Lance, there's a greater need for you in the outer world. You've shown us this. You brought us hope in this once dark land. You gave us faith when we had only fear. So promise me one thing, he said, leaning forward with compassion in his old, hazy gray eyes. Yes, sir. Lance replied softly. Promise that you will continue your legacy as a hero among men and dragons alike. Saw a smile appear on the old man's face. Lance's eyes bulged with a gasp, and he asked, You mean you're not human, but He nodded slowly. That's right, I, too, am one of your kind, and I knew of you long before you arrived here. This news shocked Lance. How could another of his kind exist without him knowing? But then when you're young and still new to this world, you're bound to find a lot of revelations that come to light. I think I'll move on to a bit of chapter 2 and actually continue from there. Chapter 2, Collision of Impact. An eerie foreboding was lurking about as Lance entered the dark castle. The scent of evil was evident in this hellhole as the door slammed shut behind him. This was the kind of place that would make even the strongest men turn completely weak, if this was any normal man, that is. The fog rolled in within every crack and crevice of the dark corridor. Lance readied himself, examining the area, holding the hilt of his sword as a glimmer of light appeared from the blade. Shadows revealed from themselves in the clearness of the blade. Shadows they leapt like bats from hell. One knocked Lance's sword out of his hand, and our hero faced the demons unarmed.
Looks like another foolish hunter searching for death,
hissed one of the demons that resembled Cerberus.
We can send him along the way,
The other demon hissed as it howled out a breath of cold ice. Lance sprang away from the range of the icy breath as he leapt for his sword lying on the ground. The other demon breathed out fire as Lance snatched his sword and rolled away from both demons. Damn! I got to defeat them, but how? Lance pondered his thought as he rushed toward the stairs. Now, of course, Lance, being of mystic strength, could use his powers, but there was only one problem. His powers were nullified by the time he entered. Readying his stance again, Lance rushed toward the Cerberus. He launched himself as the hellhound was howling out another breath from its two heads. A streak of light came out of nowhere, but within a second, their necks were cut clean off. What the hell? Who did that? Lance stopped while looking around, unaware of the other demons slipping back into the darkness. Within the seemingly endless shadows of the main hall appeared a figure which at first appeared in a shabby brown cloak and came very slowly into the light as he revealed himself. I did. He spoke a bit loud, but his tone was soft. As he showed himself, a young man about the same age as Lance, wore a blue tunic, white headband wrapped around his forehead, looked almost completely pale. You're a careless young lad, aren't you? He said with a slight smirk. And you're a big talker for someone who can use a whip like that. Lance countered back, folding his arms. Arms my name. My name's Ray Almond. They call me Arm for short. Proudly boasting as he held his hand out to him. Lance Dragoon. Nice meeting you. Thanks for saving me back there, shaking his hand in return. So, what matter of business do you have here? Asked while traveling towards the courtyard. Lance explained the situation to him while carefully traveling further along the castle's depths as they went deeper. Upon arrival to each floor that they explored, they fought a seemingly endless array of evil monsters with one sole purpose: kill those who tried to make it to the lord of the castle. Halfway through the castle, the area towards the tower was blocked, not by one, but by two monsters. Since they were outside, a bit of light was present at the time, and on top of that, Lance could use his powers now. Stalled for a bit. I still have little time to use my powers, Lance whispered, closing his eyes as he flared up his hand in defense. Not as he shot out his whip to an extended length and yanked it back, snapping the lock around what seemed to be a giant leviathan. Tugging at it with all his might, arms stood his ground as part of a bridge that was about to give way. On the other end, the hellhound from before charged straight at Lance and was completely still. As he was standing completely still, the sky began to change as the sun was setting in the east, and the flare that flowed in his hand instantly rushed to his sword as the demon was drawing closer towards him. His eyes snapped open and held out mystic glory as he roared out something that was definitely not human. A burst of energy exploded from Lance's body as the sword burned and slashed straight through the vicious hellhound. An unholy scream of agony echoed through the castle as the demon burned right in front of Lance's eyes. Yes, only two I'm going to do for now. Arm, move! He raised his other hand up as the giant sea serpent thrashed wildly to break three of the binds of the whip. Arm let go of his whip as the flare in his hand grew into a giant flame. With a sweep of his hand, he released a giant column of fire that made complete contact on impact. "Crescent Prayer!" he shouted as the column drowned and burned the serpent in a raving flash firewall as his power started to die down, nearly collapsing due to the overwhelming impact of his amazing powers. Arm caught him as they continued on, having his body exhausted. Slung on one of Arm's broad shoulders, he wondered how someone as young as he was having that much power within himself. Yes, that display of power was definitely not human. But if he was human, then what exactly was he? I kept going into deep thought. Hours passed as they finally reached the final corridor. Their bodies were aching, exhausted, and about to give way. Lance finally awakened after 3 hours of sleep. Arm, however, grew extremely tired. His legs buckled down as soon as Lance caught him. The door opened all the way on its own with a sickening creak. A soft yet loud clap was heard as they entered. They stood completely still.
Very impressed. I am truly surprised you made it this far.
The voice introduced a sudden chill in the air. Although the evil was still present. It's rather strange. The wind blew strangely in the room. A silhouette appeared as both Lance and Arm stood ready, regardless of the scars they suffered during the earlier battles that raged in the castle. The shadow revealed itself, and to their surprise, the lord of the castle turns out to be a lady. Succubus, rather. She was deadly as well as charming. Her body floated in midair as she stood still. Bats surrounded her, as her tail curled around her ever-tempting body. For someone as sexy and dark as she had a way to attract men. "Are you the lady of the castle?" Lance asked, firmly holding his sword. "Tell us what you did with the other hunters." Arm kept his hand ready for his whip.
My, what delicious creatures we have here.
Her lustful voice came into focus.
So young, so strong, and yet so handsome.
She floated over towards Lance.
You know, the both of you can be spared, but for me to do that, you just need to do one simple thing, she continued, rubbing underneath Lance's chin.
"What do you want us to do?" Arm raised a brow intently. She floated over to Armand and licked his ear seductively.
My dear, I want to pit the both of you against one another.
"Are you mad? Why?" Lance's eyes bulged, surprised by her comment.
I, Morgana, demand to see a match between the both of you. Unless you both wish to die together, that's fine too, but it would be such a shame to see such healthy men go to waste.
She chuckled as she faced her front. Armand. And sighed sadly as he readied himself, drawing his sword to him. "Come on, Lance. If this lady wants a show, let's give her one she'll never forget." A slight grin appeared on Arm's face. Lance replied with a smirk and a slight nod as he raised his sword to his chest and went into the battle stance.
"Then let the match begin!"
she announced, and snapped her fingers. With that, a ring of fire surrounded the two hunters as they faced each other in combat with a gleam in their eyes. They both stood still, dropping their weapons. They decided if it's a show this creature wanted to see, they were going to give it to her by fighting each other barehanded. And so it was. Lance and Armand rushed at each other, trading blows on another in what seemed to resemble an old-fashioned street fight, except this fight was more severe and more intense. They struck each other and from time to time counterattacked to downright guarding. As the fight intensified, so did the heat of the ring. As the fire got hotter, it was hard to see the two of them actually hitting each other. "What's going on?" Morgana rose up a bit from her seat and tried to see through the fire, but the flames nearly burned her face. There was a small view of the two of them, but it was hard to see. And when she did get a closer look, they vanished. "Is this a fluke? Where's my fight?" she declared, stomping her foot down. Before she spoke another word, sounds of chain snapped around her body as Armand reappeared, holding his chain whip tightly. With a sly, sexy smile, she swayed out of the bindings and pulled Arm close to her and locked lips with him. A dark purple haze engulfed the both of them as Arm's body was quickly aging and turning old before her eyes. Her soul was escaping its own body as she was about to claim his soul. With a bright, evil smile, her voice changed as her body built up to that of a huge vampire with large bat wings and with sharp and dangerous poison-tipped fangs. As Lance reappeared, he saw Arm being thrown away into the darkness. But as soon as he tried to get them, it's too late for him. Lance, he said weakly, that's her true form. Avenge us all. Those were the last words of Ray Armand before he died in front of Lance's eyes. Morgana laughed maniacally as she cast her gaze upon Lance. She saw his sorrow and sadness and phase in front of him as she appeared in her succubus form. Her eyes flashed an evil purple as her arms linked around him. I am so sorry, but he had to go. He just wasn't strong enough. You understand, she continued, trying to attempt to use her feminine charms to entrance him. You're more my style. So strong, brave, and very sexy. Join me and I'll make you a very rich man. Tension and anger rushed through his body as the flare began to ignite on impact once he opened his eyes. Get away from me! A bright fire exploded around his body as Morgana shrieked and growled in anger. How dare you! She replied as she retreated back to her vampire form. She was as high as the ceiling as she hissed out some bats to attack him. Lance vanished in a vapor trail, leaving a trail of fire going through the bats. As he drew his sword out, he aimed his hand out, and a beam of blue energy shot from it. Listen, strike! He yelled as the beam hit Morgana's eye, temporarily blinding her. Thrashing wildly at him. In a blind fit, she continuously slashed at Lance. He phased in and out, mainly confusing her. As he finally stood still, within striking range, her fist made impact and crushed Lance against the wall. Now for the kill, she hissed as her hand transformed into a huge web as Lance was struggling to break free, and she reappeared as a giant spider. With his sword out of his reach, he mainly tried to free at least one hand to cast his magic, but he couldn't. It seemed to be the end of our hero, until his eyes flashed, gazing at his sword. Crescent Blade awakened to its master's call, and as he stood still, floating out of view. As she drew closer, she was ready for the kill. So sad you must go, she said, her voice sounding warped and demented as she rose up, her front arm striking down at Lance's chest. As he tried to move, he narrowed his eyes to his blade, and in a flash, Crescent Blade pierced straight through Morgana, right to her heart, killing her. Her body reverted down to succubate form, and exploded with a scream of agony. The web that held Lance disappeared as he dropped to the ground and caught Crescent Blade she first. There was a calming peace as the captured souls of the dead hunters went back into their bodies, now resting in peace once and for all. A soft blue spirit appeared before Lance as it changed into humanoid form. Lance, thank you, it whispered as it vanished back to its dead body, namely Ray's. Lance had one more matter of business to deal with before heading back. He picked up Arm and made a decent grave in front of the castle. Laying his body down and covering it up, he stepped back and whispered a prayer and bowed. You were a good friend, Arm. You will be missed. Lance solemnly nodded, walking off into the night and vanished without a trace. As soon as he returned to Hasincho, he began to pack up his stuff, threw his knapsack behind his back, and went to the guild master before leaving. He told all of the details that happened and such, bowing in respect for him as he smiled a tiny bit. The sun was starting to rise over the new day as one hero's story began to unfold. I decided to do 2 chapters instead of 1 because it's something different I plan to do. So, if you want me to do more of this, please let me know in comments, and I wouldn't mind reading more of the story to you. So, I will see you next time when I actually get into chapters 3 and 4 of Legacy of the Seven Stars, Volume 1. I've been the Tenkaichi of Gaming, Ichigo Musco, and I hope you enjoy this story.